effective time management and the best use of our time is something on the agenda for the majority of small business owners that we speak to. So this short video is to cover a section of our Business Builder forum that looks at time management. We're just going to look at the Thieves of Time. The Thieves of Time is really around the key 7 time wasters that you're likely to face in your business, right through from the telephone, your meetings, and how we are indecisive or procrastinate on our decisions. So let's look at these in a bit more detail. First of all, those telephone interruptions, and I think the key aspect about your telephone is how do you make it an efficient business tool? It's not just a social tool. So are we planning our time on our calls with agendas and perhaps individual planners that basically say what is it that I want to talk about to that individual specifically? Are we batching our calls at a particular time if we know that we're not going to get hold of everybody we want to call? So have we got a specific time that we want them to phone us back so we can communicate that whilst we're leaving a message? So again, we can plan our time and control our time. Email interruptions is a big time waster for a lot of people, particularly when we've got the pop-up messages from things like our Outlook. Because when those messages pop up, then that encourages us to look at the email and consider, is it important to read? So one of the aspects I'd think about is how could we turn those messages off and only read our emails at particular times of the day, perhaps first thing and at lunchtime and before we go home. But again, we may have thinking about scheduling time for our diary, for our email reading, but also thinking about how we plan our folders. So for example, does our inbox only have the things that are awaiting us to reply for? Is the sent box awaiting for things that we're still awaiting a reply from, and then everything else is neatly in folders, perhaps subfolders of our inbox? And do you prioritise your emails? So if you're saying, okay, I've only got an hour to do my emails, are you prioritising in some way the ones that you want to respond to or deal with first? How do you manage unexpected visitors? Because we get them. It may be a colleague that just approaches the side of your desk to have a conversation with you. So can you specify to your team that there's particular times of the day that are best to interrupt you, or when you want quiet times? To control the conversation, you may stand up or make a phrase such as just one more thing before you go, so that you're in effect controlling that expectation about how long that person may stay and have that conversation with you. And I'd encourage you to think about an interruptions log so that you're identifying those regular people that are interrupting you and also the reasons why they may be interrupting you, so that you can then manage that afterwards in terms of managing the individual through communication, or secondly, if it's a common reason, do we need a system or process in place to manage that better? What about our meetings? Are we managing our meetings as effectively as possible? So do we have a purpose for our meetings? Have we got a written agenda? And if an agenda works well, do we use that as our systemized agenda for most of our meetings, if not all of our meetings? Do we know our start and end time that we want those meetings to do? Because the most important question is to ask, is this meeting necessary? Because I'm sure we've all been in meetings where you think this meeting wasn't actually required, it's just a meeting for meeting's sake. And I encourage you to think about those important issues first and get those high up the agenda. Because if you say, I've only got an hour for this meeting, if you deal with the important issues first, at least you've dealt with those before you run out of time. But also with meetings, I encourage you to keep some sort of record, whether that is minutes or just a standard action plan that summarises what people have agreed to do and take away, so that again, effectively you can manage that when you come back for the next meeting or as a review. We also perhaps too often get into the firefighting mode because we perhaps don't anticipate crises, or we have a recurrent crisis that we don't deal with by systemizing or putting a process in place to stop it in the future. So think about what's likely to impact you and what you're likely to be doing from a firefighting perspective. Now you might say that, okay, it's going to happen every day, so I might put a time in my diary. It might be 30 minutes, 60 minutes every single day to say it's like my buffer part of my day, that something's going to happen today and that's my scheduled time to deal with that crisis. But again, the most important thing is let's gather the facts and establish whether it's something that you have to firefight with or whether you can actually delegate that. With socialising, I'm not encouraging you not to be a social person, but to predominantly think about, is it what you're paid to do, or is it your objective of why you're in business? Because again, we can quite easily get sucked into socialising and not controlling the amount of socialising that we're having in those working hours. So again, you can discipline that from a time perspective and say, okay, I'm only going to socialise in particular times of the day, whether that's lunch breaks, it might be a coffee break, or when I'm making coffee. The other aspect is to think about with your colleagues, again, using phrases such as I must get back to work. So it controls that expectation about when you're not socialising. Indecision can be a big time waster, and again, I think this links to perhaps our goals and our objectives if we're clear about what it is that we're looking to achieve, because quite often we don't make a decision, but that delay of the decision only perhaps doesn't give us information that we can then perhaps learn from. So research shows that 80% of the decisions should be made as they arise. So again, if we can make the decision, we can learn by the decision. It might not be the perfect decision that's made, but at least we can learn from that and take that forward for future decisions that we may make. And when it is not necessary to decide, it is necessary not to decide. And then there's procrastination. So not too different, but procrastination is more in terms of, again, linked to our goals and objectives. If we're not quite clear in terms of what it is that we're trying to achieve, then it's very likely that we're going to get into a level of procrastination, considering whether, again, decisions to be made or not to be made. And again, thinking about how you might make promises or set deadlines or block out time to make such decisions. But again, thinking about your goals and thinking about how you can maximize the information that you have available to make the most effective decision. So hopefully that's covered the effective time wasters in a little bit more detail. If you want to cover time management in a little bit more detail than just this short video, then please join us for one of our future Business Builder forums covering time management.